Hello, and welcome to the Sleepy Discoveries. It is lovely to have you here. Before we begin, I would love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight. Maybe you're nestled in a warm bed with the sounds of evening settling outside your window. Maybe you're in a quiet corner of your home, watching the last light fade from the sky. Or perhaps you're somewhere in nature itself, feeling the gentle presence of the living world around you. Wherever you are, I hope you feel calm, unhurried, and ready to explore one of the most beautiful truths science has ever uncovered. If you enjoy these calm explorations and would like to hear more, a like and a subscribe really helps this sleepy little channel keep floating along. And to those of you who are already subscribed, thank you. Truly, your support means more than you might realize. Now, I will try not to make tonight's topic so fascinating that it keeps you wide awake. But if it does, at least you may drift off with a deeper sense of how intimately connected you are to every living thing on this planet. A small price to pay for a restless night. So shall we begin? What does it mean to say that all life on Earth is connected? And how deeply does that connection run? When you look around at the world, you see separate things. Trees standing apart from one another. Birds flying individually through the sky. A cat walking alone down a sidewalk. The mushrooms growing beneath a log. The bacteria living in your gut. The algae drifting in the ocean. Each seems to exist in its own small universe, following its own quiet purpose. But over the last century or so, scientists have been uncovering something remarkable. They have found that beneath the surface of apparent separation lies an intricate web of relationships so vast and so deeply woven that it becomes difficult to say where one life ends and another begins. Every breath you take connects you to forests thousands of miles away. Every meal you eat ties you to soil microbes, pollinators, and ancient evolutionary partnerships. The oxygen in your blood was made by microscopic organisms. The nutrients in your cells have cycled through countless other living things before reaching you. This is not metaphor. This is measurable physical reality. Life on Earth exists not as a collection of isolated individuals, but as a single interconnected system, a web so delicate and so resilient that pulling on one thread sends ripples through the entire pattern. For some, this realization feels overwhelming. It suggests that nothing we do exists in isolation, that every action touches something else, somewhere else. For others, it feels deeply comforting. It means we are never truly alone. We are held in place by invisible threads, supported by relationships we may never see but which sustain us every moment of every day. What most people agree on, though, is that understanding these connections changes how we see the world. It invites us to notice the quiet partnerships happening all around us. The fungi trading nutrients with tree roots beneath our feet. The insects carrying pollen between flowers, binding plants together across meadows, the predators and prey locked in ancient dances that keep entire ecosystems balanced, the microorganisms in the ocean producing half the oxygen we breathe, the nitrogen-fixing bacteria making life possible for every plant on land. In this video, we will drift quietly through that web of connection. There is no need to memorize species names or master ecological equations. We will move slowly, one relationship at a time, asking how life became so interwoven, what holds these connections in place, and what it means for your own existence within this vast living network. From the soil beneath your feet to the atmosphere above your head, from the tiniest bacteria to the largest whales, we will explore how every living thing participates in something much larger than itself. So tuck yourself in, close your eyes if you would like, and let your thoughts loosen just a little. Let us begin to explore a world where nothing lives alone, where every organism is both supported by and supporting countless others, and where the simple fact that you are alive makes you part of the most intricate collaboration the universe has ever created. The phrase web of life sounds poetic, almost abstract, as though it describes some vague spiritual idea rather than concrete biological reality. But when scientists speak of life as a web, they mean something precise. They mean that organisms do not exist in isolation. They mean that energy, nutrients, information, and even genetic material flow between living things in patterns so complex they resemble woven fabric. Pull on one thread, and the whole structure shifts. Remove one species, and gaps appear that ripple outward, affecting dozens or hundreds of others. One common misunderstanding is that the web of life is just a poetic metaphor, a nice way of saying that living things exist together on the same planet. A gentler, more accurate way to understand it is as a description of physical reality. The connections between organisms are not abstract or symbolic. They are measurable flows of energy, nutrients, and information. Scientists can trace nitrogen atoms from the atmosphere through bacteria, into plants, into animals. They can measure the chemical signals trees send through fungal networks. They can quantify how removing one species affects population sizes of dozens of others. The web is not a metaphor. It is a map of real physical relationships that sustain all life. To begin gently, let us start with something familiar. Imagine a single tree standing in a forest. It seems independent, rooted in its own patch of soil, drawing water and nutrients from the earth below, reaching towards sunlight above. But look more closely. That tree is not alone. Its roots are entangled with fungal networks that stretch through the soil, connecting it to other trees, sometimes hundreds of them. Through these fungal threads, the tree can share nutrients with its neighbours. If one tree has excess sugar from photosynthesis, it can send some to a tree growing in shade. If another tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical warnings through the network, allowing nearby trees to prepare their defences. This underground network, sometimes called the wood wide web, reveals that forests are not collections of individual trees competing for resources. They are cooperative communities where older trees support younger ones, where different species help one another survive, where information flows like quiet conversation through the soil. The fungi benefit too. In exchange for connecting trees, they receive sugars the trees produce through photosynthesis. This partnership, called mycorrhiza, is so ancient and so essential that most land plants cannot survive without it. Neither can the fungi. They have become so deeply intertwined that separating them is almost impossible. A gentle way to picture this is to imagine the forest floor as a vast nervous system. The trees are like neurons, and the fungal networks are the connections between them. Signals pass through the web, nutrients flow along its threads, and the whole system behaves as a kind of collective intelligence. Not intelligence in the human sense, but coordination, responsiveness, a way of sharing resources that keeps the entire community alive. This is one layer of connection, but it is only the beginning. Now, picture a bee moving from flower to flower in a meadow. The bee is gathering nectar and pollen to feed its hive, but in doing so it also carries pollen grains between plants, allowing them to reproduce. Without the bee, many of those flowers would produce no seeds. Without the flowers, the bee would starve. This relationship, called mutualism, is so finely tuned that some plants and pollinators have evolved together for millions of years. Certain flowers have shapes that match the tongues of specific bees. Certain bees have behaviours perfectly suited to specific flowers. They are partners, locked together by evolution, each depending on the other for survival. And the connections do not stop there. The seeds those flowers produce will be eaten by birds and small mammals, which carry them to new locations, spreading the plants across the landscape. The leaves of those plants will be eaten by caterpillars, which will be eaten by birds, which will be eaten by hawks. The hawks' droppings will fertilize the soil, feeding bacteria and fungi, which will break down organic matter into nutrients that plants can absorb. The cycle continues endlessly, each organism playing multiple roles, each connected to dozens of others in overlapping patterns. This is what ecologists call a food web. Not a simple chain where one thing eats another in a straight line, but a tangled network where energy and nutrients flow in many directions at once. Remove one species, and the web does not simply break. It shifts. Other species compensate, relationships change, and sometimes the entire structure reorganizes itself in unexpected ways. A soft example helps bring this to life. In the early 1900s, wolves were removed from Yellowstone National Park in the United States. People believed that removing predators would protect deer and elk populations. But something unexpected happened. Without wolves to control their numbers, elk populations exploded. They overgrazed riverside vegetation, stripping away willows and aspens. Without those plants, beavers disappeared because they needed willows to build dams. Without beaver dams, streams changed shape, eroding banks and altering water flow. Birds that nested in willows declined. Insects that depended on those plants vanished. The entire ecosystem began to unravel. Then, in the 1990s, wolves were reintroduced. Within a few years, the system began to heal. Elk populations stabilized. Plants regrew along riverbanks. Beavers returned. Birds came back. Even the shape of the rivers changed as vegetation stabilized the soil. The return of a single species rippled through the entire web, restoring connections that had been broken for decades. This is the power and fragility of interconnection. Life does not exist in isolated pockets. It exists in relationship, and those relationships shape everything from the chemistry of soil to the flow of water to the structure of entire landscapes. Another gentle metaphor can help hold this idea. Picture life on Earth as a vast tapestry woven from countless threads. Each thread represents a species, a relationship, a flow of energy or nutrients. Some threads are thick and strong, representing abundant species or crucial connections. Others are fine and delicate, representing rare organisms or subtle interactions. The threads cross one another, loop around each other, and tie into knots of dense relationship. If you pull out a single thread, the tapestry might hold, but pull out too many, or pull out one that many others depend on, and the whole fabric begins to fray. This tapestry has been woven over billions of years. Life began as single-celled organisms in ancient oceans, and slowly, gradually it diversified and spread. But even as species multiplied, they did not drift apart into isolation. Instead, they formed partnerships, dependencies, and feedback loops. They became entangled, and the more complex life became, the more deeply connected it grew. These connections are not just ecological, they are also evolutionary. Every living thing on Earth shares a common ancestor. If you trace your lineage back far enough, you will find that you are related to every plant, every animal, every fungus, every bacterium. The genetic code inside your cells is written in the same language as the genetic code inside a mushroom, a fern, a whale, a bacterium living in a deep-sea vent. You share genes with all of them. Some of those genes are so ancient and so essential that they have remained almost unchanged for billions of years. This means that when you look at another living thing, you are looking at a distant cousin. The spider spinning a web outside your window shares ancestors with you. The moss growing on a rock shares ancestors with you. The bacteria in your gut, the algae in the ocean, the birds singing at dawn, all of them are part of your extended family. Life on Earth is not just connected ecologically, It is connected by blood, by history, by shared origins that stretch back to the very beginning. A calm way to imagine this is to picture a vast tree with billions of branches. At the base of the trunk is the first living cell, the ancestor of all life. As time passes, the trunk splits into branches, each branch representing a new lineage. Some branches split again and again, creating dense clusters of closely related species. Other branches stretch out alone, representing organisms that took unique evolutionary paths. But every branch, no matter how distant, is still part of the same tree. Every living thing is connected by the structure of this tree, by the pathways of evolutionary history that link all life together. When approached slowly and without exaggeration, the web of life becomes less of an abstract idea and more of a felt reality. It is something you can see in the way plants and pollinators depend on one another, something you can feel in the air you breathe, which was made by photosynthetic organisms, something you can taste in the food you eat, which contains nutrients cycled through countless other living things before reaching your plate. And so this chapter begins with gentle clarity. Life on Earth is not a collection of separate beings living parallel existences. It is a single interconnected system where every organism plays a role, where every species depends on others, and where the boundaries between self and other blur into a web of relationships so intricate it defies complete understanding. Between the familiar sense of individual existence and the deeper truth of radical interconnection lies a question worth drifting through with patience. A question that sets the stage for a calm and curious journey into how life became so beautifully entangled and what that means for you, here, now, as a living part of this vast web. To understand how deeply life is connected, it helps to follow something simple, something quiet and invisible, but absolutely essential. Let us follow a single molecule of carbon as it moves through the web of life, changing form, passing from one organism to another, cycling endlessly through the living world. Begin with the air. Carbon dioxide drifts through the atmosphere, a simple molecule made of one carbon atom and two oxygen atoms. This carbon might have been exhaled by you just moments ago, or it might have been released by a decomposing leaf, a volcanic vent, or the smoke from a distant fire. Wherever it came from, it floats now in the open air, invisible, weightless, waiting. Then a leaf catches it. Somewhere in a forest or a field or a quiet garden, a plant absorbs that carbon dioxide molecule through tiny pores in its leaves. Inside the leaf's cells, within structures called chloroplasts, photosynthesis begins. Sunlight strikes the leaf and its energy is used to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen combines with the carbon dioxide, forming a simple sugar, glucose. The oxygen's released back into the air for you to breathe, and the carbon, which was drifting free, is now locked inside a sugar molecule part of the plant's body. This is the entry point. Carbon from the atmosphere has become part of a living thing. The plant uses that sugar for energy, breaking it down to fuel growth, repair, reproduction. Some of the carbon is incorporated into the plant's structure, becoming cellulose in cell walls, lignin in wood, starch stored in roots. The carbon that was floating in the air is now solid, part of a trunk, a stem, a root stretching through soil. But the carbon does not stay there forever. A caterpillar crawls along the plant's leaf and takes a bite. The carbon, locked in plant tissue, enters the caterpillar's digestive system. Enzymes break down the plant material, releasing sugars and other molecules. The caterpillar absorbs them, using the carbon to build its own body to fuel its own metabolism. The carbon that was in the air, then in the plant, is now in the caterpillar. A bird spots the caterpillar and swoops down, plucking it from the leaf. The caterpillar is swallowed, digested, and its molecules, including that carbon atom, are absorbed into the bird's body. The carbon becomes part of a feather perhaps, or a muscle, or fuel burned to keep the bird warm and active. The carbon has moved again from air to plant to caterpillar to bird, passing through the food web like a traveller moving from one host to another. The bird lives for several years, flying, feeding, raising young. Then one day it dies. Its body falls to the forest floor and decomposition begins. Bacteria and fungi move in, breaking down tissues, releasing nutrients back into the soil. The carbon in the bird's body is returned to the earth. Some of it is absorbed by plant roots and enters another cycle. Some of it is respired by decomposers and returns to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, ready to be captured by another leaf, another photosynthesizing organism. The cycle continues, endlessly. That single carbon atom might pass through hundreds of organisms over the course of years or centuries. It might spend time in the ocean, dissolved in water, absorbed by algae, eaten by tiny zooplankton, consumed by a fish, exhaled back into the water, drifting until it is taken up by another organism. It might sink to the ocean floor, becoming part of sediment, locked away for millions of years until geological processes return it to the surface. It might be taken up by a tree stored in wood for decades, released in a forest fire, and returned to the atmosphere in smoke. This is the carbon cycle, one of several great cycles that connect all life on Earth. Carbon flows through the web, linking atmosphere, ocean, soil, and living things in a continuous loop. But carbon is not alone. Nitrogen cycles through the web in similar ways, captured from the atmosphere by bacteria, converted into forms plants can use, passed through food webs, returned to soil and air by decomposition. Water cycles through evaporation, precipitation, absorption by plants, release through transpiration, and return to oceans and atmosphere. Phosphorus, sulfur, and other essential elements follow their own pathways, each cycling through living and non-living systems, connecting everything in overlapping patterns. One common misunderstanding about decomposition is that it represents decay, an ending, something unpleasant or wasteful. A gentler, more accurate way to see it is as recycling, transformation, and renewal. When a plant or animal dies, its body does not disappear or become waste. It becomes food and raw material for countless other organisms. Decomposers, bacteria, fungi, and small invertebrates break down complex molecules into simpler forms that plants can absorb. The nutrients that made up one organism's body are released back into circulation, ready to become part of new life. Without decomposition, nutrients would be locked away in dead tissue, unavailable to living things. The cycles would stop, life would cease. Decomposition is not an ending. It is a return, a way of giving back to the web what was borrowed, ensuring that life can continue. A gentle way to picture this is to imagine the Earth as a vast circulatory system. Just as blood flows through your body, carrying oxygen and nutrients to every cell, these cycles flow through the planet, carrying essential elements to every organism. The ocean is like a great heart, pumping water into the atmosphere. The atmosphere is like lungs, exchanging gases with the living world. The soil is like a digestive system, breaking down organic matter and releasing nutrients. And living things are like cells, taking in what they need, transforming it and passing it along. These cycles reveal something profound. The atoms in your body are not uniquely yours. They have been part of countless other organisms before you. The carbon in your bones might have once been part of a dinosaur, a fern in a primordial forest, a bacterium in ancient seas. The nitrogen in your DNA might have been cycled through the bodies of thousands of creatures over millions of years. The water in your cells might have fallen as rain on distant mountains, flowed through rivers, been drunk by animals, evaporated from oceans, and returned again and again. You're not made of new material. You're made of recycled atoms, ancient elements that have been circulating through the web of life since the beginning. Every breath you take, every meal you eat, every drop of water you drink, you are participating in cycles that connect you to every other living thing that has ever existed. Another soft metaphor helps hold this truth. Imagine the web of life as a vast symphony orchestra. Each organism is an instrument playing its own part, but the music they create is not a collection of separate solos. It is a unified composition where each note depends on the others. The string section supports the brass. The woodwinds respond to the percussion. Harmonies emerge from the interplay of different as voice. Remove one instrument and the music changes. The orchestra compensates, adjusting its sound, but something is missing. The cycles of carbon, nitrogen, water, and other elements are like the rhythm underlying the symphony. They keep time, they set the tempo, they create the structure that allows the music to flow. Without these cycles, the orchestra would fall silent. Life would cease. But as long as the cycles continue, as long as elements flow through the web, the symphony plays on, complex and beautiful, connecting every living thing in a single ongoing performance. It is important to approach these ideas with both wonder and scientific caution. The cycles are real and measurable. Scientists can trace carbon isotopes through food webs. They can measure nitrogen fixation rates in soil. They can track water movement through ecosystems using sophisticated instruments. The interconnection is not metaphorical speculation. It is grounded in chemistry, physics, and biology. At the same time, the cycles are more complex than any simple diagram can capture. They involve countless organisms, chemical reactions, and physical processes all happening simultaneously. They are influenced by temperature, pressure, geological activity, and the actions of living things. They are resilient in some ways, absorbing shocks and continuing to function even when disrupted. But they are also fragile in other ways, vulnerable to large-scale changes that can push them out of balance. When humans add massive amounts of carbon to the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels, we are not creating new carbon. We are taking carbon that was locked away in ancient organic matter and releasing it back into the active cycle. This tips the balance, adding carbon faster than natural processes can absorb it. The atmosphere warms, ocean chemistry changes, the entire system shifts in response. This is not separate from the web of life. This is the web responding to a sudden influx of material struggling to find a new equilibrium. The cycles show us that nothing exists in isolation. Every action has consequences that ripple through the web. Every organism that breathes, eats, grows, dies, and decays is participating in these great flows of matter and energy. You are part of these cycles right now. The air you breathe, the food digesting in your stomach, the water in your blood, all of it is cycling through you, connecting you to oceans, forests, soil, atmosphere, and countless other living things. A final thought to drift through gently. The cycles mean that death is not an ending. It is a transformation, a return, a way of giving back to the web what was borrowed. When an organism dies, its body does not disappear. It is broken down by decomposers, its molecules released back into circulation, ready to become part of new life. The carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and water that made up its body will be taken up by plants, absorbed by microbes, incorporated into new organisms. In this way, life is continuous. It does not stop and start with individuals. It flows endlessly through the great cycles that connect everything. This is the second layer of connection. Not just ecological relationships between species, but physical cycles that bind all life together in a single planetary system. Between the breath you just took and the exhale that will follow lies a molecule of oxygen made by a photosynthetic organism somewhere on Earth. Between the meal you ate this morning and the energy it gave you lies a chain of transformation stretching back through soil, sun, water, and countless other living things. You are not separate from the web. You are woven into it, molecule by molecule, breath by breath, sustained by the same cycles that have sustained life for billions of years. If we follow the connections deeper, we reach a layer of relationships so intimate, so essential that most people never think about it. This is the world of symbiosis, where organisms of different species live together in such close partnership that they become almost indistinguishable from a single being. These relationships reveal that the boundaries between organisms are not as clear as they seem. Life does not always exist in neat separate packages. Sometimes it blurs and merges, creating collaborations so successful that they reshape the entire web. To begin gently, let us start with something you carry inside you right now. Your gut contains trillions of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms. Together, they are called your microbiome, and they are not passengers. They are partners. These microbes help you digest food, breaking down complex molecules your own cells cannot process. They produce vitamins your body needs but cannot make on its own. They train your immune system, teaching it to distinguish between helpful microbes and harmful invaders. They even influence your mood and behavior through chemical signals sent to your brain. In return, you provide them with shelter and food. Your body is their home, a warm, stable environment where they can thrive. The relationship is so deep that you could not survive without them. If all the microbes in your gut were suddenly removed, you would become malnourished. Your immune system would fail and your health would collapse. You're not just you, you're a community, a collection of trillions of organisms working together, so interconnected that separating them is almost meaningless. A gentle way to picture this is to imagine yourself as a walking ecosystem. Just as a forest contains many species living together, your body contains many species living within it. You are the landscape they inhabit, and they are the invisible gardeners keeping that landscape healthy. This is symbiosis at its most intimate, a partnership so close that the line between host and symbiont blurs into something new. But symbiosis extends far beyond the human body. It is everywhere in the web of life, holding connections in place, creating new possibilities, shaping evolution itself. Consider coral reefs, some of the most diverse and productive ecosystems on Earth. Coral animals are tiny, soft-bodied creatures that build hard skeletons around themselves. But they do not live alone. Inside their tissues are microscopic algae called zooxanthellae, which photosynthesize, turning sunlight into energy. The algae share that energy with the coral, providing up to 90% of the coral's food. In return, the coral gives the algae a protected place to live and access to nutrients from the water. This partnership is so essential that coral cannot survive in deep, dark water where sunlight does not reach. The coral depends on the algae, and the algae depend on the coral. They have become a single functional unit, neither able to thrive without the other. When ocean temperatures rise too high, the algae are expelled and the coral bleaches, losing its colour and its primary food source. The relationship breaks down and both partners suffer. Another beautiful example lives beneath the soil. Lichens, which grow on rocks, trees and bare ground, appear to be single organisms, but they are not. Each lichen is a partnership between a fungus and an alga or cyanobacterium. The fungus provides structure, holding the partnership together and protecting the photosynthetic partner from harsh conditions. The alga or cyanobacterium provides food through photosynthesis. Together, they can survive in environments where neither could live alone. They colonize bare rock, breaking it down slowly over centuries, creating the first layer of soil that allows other plants to grow. They endure freezing cold, intense heat, and long droughts. The partnership is so successful that lichens exist on every continent, from tropical rainforests to Antarctic deserts. These relationships reveal something remarkable. Evolution does not only create competition between species, it also creates cooperation. Organisms that form successful partnerships gain advantages neither could achieve alone. They access new resources, colonize new environments, and survive conditions that would kill them in isolation. Over time, some partnerships become so deeply integrated that they are no longer optional. They become essential. Another misconception that deserves gentle correction is the phrase survival of the fittest, which many people interpret as meaning that nature rewards only the strongest, most aggressive, or most competitive organisms. A more accurate understanding recognizes that fitness in evolutionary terms simply means reproductive success, how well an organism passes on its genes. Sometimes fitness comes from being strong or fast, yes. But just as often, fitness comes from cooperation, from forming partnerships, from being helpful to others. The organisms that survive and thrive are not always those that fight hardest, but often those that work together best. Evolution rewards cooperation as much as competition. Symbiosis is not an exception to natural selection. It is one of its most powerful strategies. The most profound example of this may be the origin of complex life itself. Every cell in your body, every cell in every plant, animal, and fungus on Earth contains structures called mitochondria. These tiny organelles produce energy by breaking down sugars and fats, fueling all cellular processes. But mitochondria were not always part of complex cells. Billions of years ago, they were free-living bacteria. At some point, one of these bacteria was engulfed by a larger cell. Instead of being digested, it survived, living inside the larger cell and providing energy. The host cell, in turn, provided protection and nutrients. This partnership was so successful that it changed the course of evolution. The descendants of that ancient collaboration are all complex life on Earth. Every animal, every plant, every fungus carries mitochondria in their cells, the remnants of ancient bacteria that became permanent partners. The bacteria lost their independence, becoming organelles, but they gained stability and resources. The host cell gained a powerful source of energy, allowing it to grow larger, more complex, and more capable. Together, they created something entirely new. This process, called endosymbiosis, did not happen just once. Plant cells contain structures called chloroplasts, which perform photosynthesis. Chloroplasts were also once free-living bacteria similar to modern cyanobacteria. They were engulfed by an early plant ancestor and became permanent partners, giving plants the ability to turn sunlight into food. Without this ancient symbiosis, there would be no plants, no trees, no forests, no grasslands. The green world you see around you exists because of a partnership formed over 1 billion years ago. A soft metaphor brings this truth to life. Imagine life as a vast collaboration where different organisms bring different skills to the table. One organism might be good at capturing sunlight but poor at withstanding harsh conditions. Another might be resilient and tough but unable to produce its own food. When they partner, they cover each other's weaknesses, creating something stronger than either alone. Over time, these partnerships become so successful that they stop being partnerships in the conventional sense. They become fusions, new kinds of organisms that carry the legacy of both partners in their DNA. This is the third layer of connection. Not just ecological relationships or cycling nutrients, but intimate mergers where organisms blend together, where the boundaries between self and other dissolve, where life reveals itself as fundamentally collaborative. You're not a single organism. You're a colony, a community, built from partnerships that go back billions of years. The mitochondria in your cells are ancient bacterial partners. The microbes in your gut are current partners. Even your cells themselves are collaborative ventures, the result of mergers so old they predate most of life's diversity. When approached slowly, symbiosis shifts how we think about individuality. The idea of a separate, independent self becomes harder to maintain. You depend on other organisms for your survival. Your body is home to countless microbial lives. Your cells contain structures that were once independent bacteria. Where do you end and other life begins? The answer is unclear, and perhaps the question itself is flawed. Perhaps life is not about individuals at all. Perhaps it is about relationships, partnerships, networks of mutual support that create the appearance of separate beings. Philosophers and scientists have wrestled with this question. If your microbiome is essential to your health, are those microbes part of you? If your cells contain mitochondria descended from bacteria, are you partly bacterial? If symbiotic relationships are so common and so essential, does the concept of a single organism even make sense? Some thinkers suggest that all life is symbiotic in some way, that cooperation and interdependence are more fundamental than competition and independence. These ideas are gentle, thoughtful, and humbling. They suggest that the living world is more interconnected than our everyday experience reveals. They remind us that survival often depends on partnership, that evolution creates collaboration as much as conflict, that the most successful organisms are often those who learn to live together, rather than alone. At the same time, it is important to balance wonder with accuracy. Not all relationships are symbiotic. Predation, parasitism, and competition are also real. Some organisms do harm others. Some relationships are exploitative rather than mutual. The web of life includes both cooperation and conflict, both harmony and struggle. Symbiosis is powerful, but it is not the only force shaping the living world. Still, the prevalence of symbiosis is striking. It appears in every ecosystem, at every scale, from microscopic bacteria living inside larger cells to entire forests connected by fungal networks. It suggests that cooperation is not a rare exception, but a fundamental strategy of life. When conditions are harsh, when resources are scarce, when survival is difficult, organisms that can work together have an advantage. Over time, natural selection favors these partnerships, weaving them deeper into the fabric of life. A final thought to drift through gently. Symbiosis teaches us that connection is not just beneficial, it is essential. It is the foundation of complexity, the source of resilience, the way life has managed to colonize nearly every environment on Earth. From the deepest ocean trenches to the highest mountain peaks, from scorching deserts to frozen tundra, life thrives through partnership. Organisms that once seemed independent reveal themselves as collaborators, woven together in relationships that sustain them, that allow them to endure, that make life possible at all. This is the third layer of connection, and it runs as deep as life itself. Between your breath and your heartbeat lies the work of mitochondria, ancient bacterial partners providing energy. Between your digestion and your immunity lies the work of your microbiome, microbial partners keeping you healthy. Between the forests and their resilience lies the work of mycorrhizal fungi, connecting trees in underground alliances. You're not alone. You've never been alone. You're held in place by partnerships so old and so essential that they have become invisible, woven into the very structure of what it means to be alive. If we step back from individual relationships and look at the larger patterns, we see that life on Earth is not just connected through partnerships and nutrient cycles. It is connected through vast networks of interaction that shape entire landscapes and influence global systems. These networks operate at scales so large they are difficult to perceive, yet they affect every organism, including you. To understand the full depth of connection, we must drift through these larger structures and see how individual threads weave into planetary scale patterns. Let us begin gently with something called a keystone species. In any ecosystem, some species play roles so important that their presence or absence determines the structure of the entire community. They are like the keystone in an arch, the central stone that holds all the others in place. Remove it and the arch collapses. Keystone species work the same way. They are not necessarily the most abundant or the most visible, but their influence ripples through the web, holding connections together. One common misunderstanding is that the most important species in an ecosystem are the largest, most numerous, or most visible ones. A more nuanced view recognizes that importance is measured not by size or abundance, but by influence. A keystone species might be relatively small or rare, but its role in the ecosystem is disproportionately large. It is not about being the biggest or most common. It is about the connections a species maintains, the relationships it holds in place, the balance it creates. Removing a common species might have minor effects, while removing a rare but influential keystone can trigger cascading changes throughout the entire system. The wolves of Yellowstone, which we touched on earlier, are a keystone species. Their presence controls elk populations, which in turn affects vegetation, which influences beavers, birds, insects, and even the physical shape of rivers. The wolves themselves are not numerous, but their impact is enormous. They hold the ecosystem in balance, maintaining relationships between dozens of species. Another example lives in the ocean. Sea otters along the Pacific coast of North America feed on sea urchins. Sea urchins feed on kelp, the large seaweeds that form underwater forests. When sea otters are present, they keep urchin populations in check, allowing kelp forests to thrive. These kelp forests provide habitat for fish, invertebrates, and marine mammals. They stabilize the ocean floor, reduce wave energy, and support immense biodiversity. But when sea otters were hunted nearly to extinction in the 1800s, urchin populations exploded. They devoured the kelp forests, creating underwater deserts called urchin barrens. Fish disappeared. Biodiversity collapsed. The entire ecosystem transformed. When otters were protected and their populations recovered, the kelp forests returned. The ecosystem shifted back toward its original state, demonstrating how a single species can hold an entire community together. The otters are a keystone, and their presence maintains the structure of the web. A soft way to picture this is to imagine an ecosystem as a vast mobile, the kind you might hang above a baby's crib. Each piece of the mobile represents a species, and they are connected by delicate threads. The mobile hangs in balance, gently turning each piece in its proper place. But one piece, the keystone, is attached to more threads than the others. If you remove it, the entire mobile shifts, tilts, and loses its balance. Some pieces drift away, others collide. The structure that once seemed stable now struggles to hold itself together. Keystone species reveal that not all connections are equal. Some relationships are more critical than others. Some species have disproportionate influence, shaping the web in ways that affect everything connected to them. Understanding these relationships helps us see that ecosystems are not random collections of organisms. They are structured, organized by the interactions that create stability and resilience. But the connections extend even further. Beyond individual ecosystems, life influences the planet itself. This is where we encounter an idea both beautiful and humbling. Life does not just adapt to Earth's conditions, life shapes them. Over billions of years, living organisms have transformed the atmosphere, the oceans, the soil, and even the climate. The planet you live on is not a passive stage where life performs. It is a co-creation, shaped by the collective activity of countless organisms over immense spans of time. Consider the atmosphere. When life first appeared on Earth, the atmosphere contained almost no oxygen. It was made mostly of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and other gases. But around 2.4 billion years ago, something remarkable happened. Cyanobacteria, tiny photosynthetic organisms living in the oceans, began producing oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. At first, the oxygen reacted with iron and other minerals, rusting the planet and turning ancient oceans red. But eventually, oxygen began accumulating in the atmosphere. This event, called the Great Oxidation, was catastrophic for many organisms. Oxygen is reactive and toxic to many forms of life that evolved in its absence. Mass extinctions occurred, but oxygen also created new opportunities. It allowed the evolution of aerobic respiration, a far more efficient way of producing energy. It created the ozone layer, which protects life from harmful ultraviolet radiation. It made complex, large, active organisms possible. The oxygen you breathe right now exists because of ancient cyanobacteria that transformed the planet billions of years ago. Life did not stop there. Plants, algae, and other photosynthetic organisms continue to produce oxygen, maintaining the atmosphere at levels that support animal life. They also remove carbon dioxide, regulating atmospheric chemistry. Forests act as carbon sinks, absorbing CO2 and storing it in wood and soil. Phytoplankton in the ocean produce roughly half of all oxygen on Earth and absorb massive amounts of carbon. These organisms are not just living in the environment, they are creating and maintaining it. Another gentle example is soil. Soil is not just dirt, it is a living system, one of the most complex and biologically rich environments on Earth. A single handful of healthy soil contains billions of bacteria, millions of fungi, thousands of protozoa, nematodes, and microarthropods. These organisms break down organic matter, cycle nutrients, create structure, and support plant growth. Without them, soil would be sterile rock dust, unable to support the plants that feed the rest of the web. Soil formation is a slow process, often taking hundreds or thousands of years to build just a few inches. It begins with the weathering of rock, but it is life that transforms that weathered rock into fertile soil. Lichens colonize bare stone, breaking it down through chemical and physical processes. Mosses follow, trapping moisture and organic matter. Dead organisms decompose, adding nutrients. Plant roots grow, breaking rock apart and pulling minerals into circulation. Fungi and bacteria work tirelessly, recycling nutrients, building soil structure, creating the foundation for more complex plant communities. Over time, this living soil spreads across the landscape, supporting forests, grasslands, and wetlands. It becomes a reservoir of life, holding water, storing carbon, filtering pollutants, and supporting the plants that produce oxygen and food. Without soil organisms, terrestrial life as you know it would not exist. The green world is built on a foundation of microbial labour, a hidden network of decomposers and nutrient cyclers working beneath your feet. A calm metaphor helps hold this truth. Picture Earth as a garden tended by its own inhabitants. The gardeners are the organisms themselves, each contributing to the maintenance and improvement of the whole. Plants produce oxygen and stabilize soil. Decomposers recycle nutrients and build fertility. Predators control populations and prevent overgrazing. Pollinators connect plants across landscapes. Keystone species hold ecosystems in balance. Together, these gardeners have transformed a barren rock into a living world, maintaining conditions that support not just themselves, but all life. This perspective, sometimes called the Gaia hypothesis, suggests that Earth's living and non-living systems are interconnected in ways that create a self-regulating planetary system. Life does not just respond to environmental conditions, it creates feedback loops that stabilize those conditions, maintaining temperatures, atmospheric composition, and ocean chemistry within ranges that support life. This does not mean the planet is a conscious organism, but it does suggest that life and environment are deeply entangled, co-evolving, shaping each other in ways that blur the boundary between living and non-living. Scientists debate the extent of this self-regulation and whether it should be considered a true planetary system or simply the sum of many local processes. But what is clear is that life has global effects. Photosynthesis affects atmospheric chemistry. Forests influence rainfall patterns. Ocean organisms influence carbon cycles. The cumulative activity of billions of organisms, each following its own local needs, creates planetary-scale patterns that shape the conditions of life itself. This is the fourth layer of connection. Not just relationships between species, not just nutrient cycles and symbiotic partnerships, but global networks where life influences the planet and the planet shapes life. You are part of this. Every breath you take adds carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Every plant you interact with contributes to oxygen production. Every bite of food you consume participates in global nutrient cycles. Your existence is woven into planetary systems so vast they stretch across continents and oceans, connecting you to processes happening in rainforests, coral reefs, tundra, and deep seas. Another misconception worth addressing gently is the idea that humans exist outside of nature, that we are somehow separate from or above the natural world. A more accurate understanding recognizes that humans are part of the web of life, not separate from it. We evolved within this web. We depend on it for air, water, food, climate stability, and countless other essential services. Our actions affect the web, sending ripples through ecosystems and global cycles. When we change forests, oceans, or atmosphere, we are not acting on something external. We are altering the very system that sustains us. This is not a moral judgment. It is simply recognizing reality. We are threads in the web, connected to everything else, and what we do to the web, we ultimately do to ourselves. A gentle reminder can help keep this perspective grounded. These connections are real, but they are also fragile. Human activity is disrupting many of these global networks. Deforestation reduces carbon storage and oxygen production. Pollution harms soil organisms and ocean life. Climate change alters temperature and weather patterns faster than many species can adapt. The web of life is resilient, but it is not indestructible. Understanding the depth of connection reveals both the beauty of the system and the care it requires. Still, the knowledge of connection can be empowering. When you understand that you are part of a planetary web, that your actions ripple outward in ways both seen and unseen, it becomes easier to see your role not as separate from nature but as part of it. You're not an observer standing outside the web. You're a thread within it, connected to countless others, participating in patterns that sustain all life. A final thought to drift through gently. The web of life operates at every scale, from the microscopic interactions between bacteria and plant roots to the global cycles of carbon and water. Each scale reveals new layers of connection, new ways that organisms depend on one another and on the planet itself. And at every scale, the pattern is the same. Life exists in relationship. Nothing lives alone. Nothing survives without support from the rest of the web. From the smallest microbe to the largest whale, from the deepest ocean to the highest atmosphere, All life is held in a single interconnected system, a web so intricate and so vast that exploring it feels like discovering the universe within your own backyard. This is the fourth layer of connection, and it reminds us that our home is not just a planet, it is a living system shaped by life, sustained by life, and dependent on the continued health of the countless relationships that hold it together. If we follow the connections back through time, we reach a layer of relationship that runs even deeper than ecology or planetary systems. This is the layer of evolutionary history, the shared ancestry that links every living thing on Earth through billions of years of common descent. When scientists say that all life is connected, they do not just mean connected now, through food webs and nutrient cycles, they mean connected always, through the deep structure of evolutionary history that ties every organism to the same ancient origin. To begin gently, let us consider what it means to share an ancestor. You share ancestors with your siblings, your parents, your cousins, stretching back through your family tree. But if you trace that tree far enough, it connects to other families, other communities, other populations. Go back far enough and every human on Earth shares common ancestors. We are all, quite literally, distant cousins, related through branching lineages that converge in the past. But the family tree does not stop with humans. If you continue tracing backward, you reach ancestors shared with chimpanzees and bonobos, our closest living relatives. Keep going, and you reach ancestors shared with all primates, then all mammals, then all vertebrates, then all animals, then all complex life. Eventually, if you trace back far enough, you reach an ancestor shared with every living thing on Earth. A single organism, or perhaps a small population of organisms that lived billions of years ago and from which all subsequent life descends. This is not speculation. It is grounded in overwhelming evidence from genetics, paleontology, comparative anatomy, and molecular biology. Every living thing shares the same basic biochemistry. DNA stores genetic information in all organisms using the same chemical code. Proteins are built from the same amino acids. Cells use the same energy currency, a molecule called ATP. These similarities are not coincidences. They are inherited traits, passed down from common ancestors, linking all life through a single unbroken chain of descent. One common misunderstanding about evolution is that it represents a ladder or hierarchy, with simple organisms at the bottom and humans at the top, as though evolution were a progression toward greater complexity or superiority. A more accurate understanding views evolution as a branching tree, not a ladder. Every living species today is equally evolved. A bacterium living in soil is just as evolved as a human. It has simply evolved to thrive in different conditions. There is no top of the evolutionary tree, no pinnacle species, no ultimate or goal. Every organism alive today is the current endpoint of its own evolutionary lineage, shaped by billions of years of adaptation to its environment. We are all branches on the same tree, spreading in different directions, each equally valid, each equally the product of evolutionary history. A soft way to picture this is to imagine life as a vast tree growing from a single seed. The trunk represents the earliest life, simple single-celled organisms living in ancient oceans. As time passes, the trunk splits into branches, each representing a major lineage. One branch becomes bacteria, another becomes archaea, a third becomes eukaryotes, the domain that includes all complex life, plants, animals, fungi, and protists. Each of these branches splits again and again, creating smaller branches, twigs, and leaves, each representing a species living today or extinct. Every organism on Earth is a leaf on this tree, connected to every other leaf through the branching structure of evolutionary history. You and a mushroom are on different branches, but if you trace those branches back far enough, they merge into a common trunk. You and a bacterium are on even more distant branches, but you still share a root. The tree of life is a single structure, and every living thing is part of it. This shared ancestry reveals itself in unexpected ways. Consider your hands. They have 5 fingers, a pattern shared by most vertebrates. Frogs have 5 digits. Bats have 5 elongated finger bones supporting their wings. Whales have 5 bone structures inside their flippers. Birds have remnants of 5 digits in their wings, though some have fused or reduced over time. This pattern is not random. It is inherited from a common ancestor, a fish-like creature that lived hundreds of millions of years ago and had 5 bony supports in its fins. As vertebrates diversified and adapted to different environments, those 5 bones were modified in countless ways. They became fingers for grasping, wings for flying, flippers for swimming, hooves for running. But the underlying pattern remained, a signature of shared ancestry visible in the bones of every descendant. This is called homology, the presence of similar structures across different species because they inherited them from a common ancestor. Homology appears everywhere. The bones in a bat's wing, a whale's flipper, a human hand and a bird's wing are arranged in the same basic pattern. The vertebrae in your spine are variations on the same theme found in fish, amphibians, reptiles and other mammals. Even your eyes, those intricate organs that allow you to see, share deep similarities with the eyes of octopuses, despite the fact that vertebrates and cephalopods diverged over 500 million years ago. The similarities are not perfect because evolution modifies and adapts structures to new purposes, but the echoes of shared ancestry are unmistakable. Another gentle example comes from embryonic development. If you watch embryos of different vertebrate species developing, you will see remarkable similarities in early stages. Fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals all go through phases where they have similar structures: a notochord, gill-like structures, a tail, and a series of repeating body segments. As development continues, these structures differentiate, becoming gills in fish, lungs in mammals, specialized jawbones in reptiles. But the early similarities reveal shared ancestry, showing that different species modify the same basic developmental program to create diverse adult forms. These patterns are not just anatomical, they appear in DNA itself. When scientists compare genomes across species, they find stunning similarities. Humans and chimpanzees share about 98 to 99% of their DNA. Humans and mice share about 85%. Humans and fruit flies share about 60% of their genes, particularly those involved in basic cellular functions. Even humans and yeast, a single-celled fungus, share about 20% of their genes. These are not approximate similarities, they are precise measurable matches, regions of DNA so similar that their common origin is undeniable. Some genes are so essential that they have remained almost unchanged for billions of years. Genes involved in basic cellular processes, in reading DNA, in producing proteins, appear in nearly identical form across vastly different organisms. A gene that helps regulate body plan development in fruit flies has a counterpart in humans that performs similar functions. When scientists insert human versions of certain genes into fruit flies, the genes work, performing their functions in a completely different organism. This works because the genes are inherited from a common ancestor, part of a shared genetic toolkit that all complex life uses. A calm metaphor helps hold this truth. Imagine life as a vast library where every book is a variation on an original manuscript. The manuscript was written billions of years ago, and all subsequent books are copies, revisions, and expansions of that first text. Some books are very similar, like different editions of the same work. Others are heavily modified, with new chapters added, old sections deleted, and passages rewritten. But if you look closely, you can still see traces of the original manuscript in every book. The same phrases appear, the same narrative structures recur, the same themes echo through different stories. This is what evolutionary history reveals. All life is variations on a common theme, modifications of an ancient blueprint, revisions of genetic instructions passed down through billions of years. You are not separate from the rest of life, you are a continuation of it, a living link in an unbroken chain stretching back to the very beginning. This realization can be profound. When you look at a tree, you're not looking at something fundamentally different from yourself. You're looking at a distant cousin, a fellow descendant of the same ancient ancestors. The tree's cells use the same basic machinery as yours. Its DNA is written in the same chemical language. It grows, reproduces, responds to its environment, and maintains itself using processes that are variations on the same themes your own body uses. The same is true for every living thing. The bacteria in your gut are distant relatives. The birds singing outside your window are cousins. The mushrooms growing in the forest, the algae in the ocean, the insects in the soil, all of them are family. Not in a metaphorical sense, but in a literal, measurable, scientifically demonstrable sense. You share ancestors with all of them. Your DNA carries evidence of that shared history. Your body is built using instructions inherited from organisms that lived millions and billions of years ago. This is the fifth layer of connection, and it runs deeper than any other. It means that the web of life is not just a present-day network of relationships. It is a historical structure built over immense spans of time, connecting every living thing through the branching pathways of evolutionary descent. You're not just connected to other organisms through ecology and chemistry, you are connected through history, through the deep structure of inheritance that makes all life one continuous, unbroken lineage. When approached slowly, this truth shifts how we see the world. The divisions between species, which seem so clear and absolute, are revealed as temporary branches on a single tree. The differences between humans and other animals, which we often emphasize, are shown to be variations on shared themes. The boundary between us and them blurs, because we are all part of the same living system, shaped by the same evolutionary forces, descended from the same ancient origins. Philosophers and scientists have reflected on what this means for ethics, for how we treat other living things, for our sense of place in the world. If all life is related, if we share ancestry with every organism, does that change our responsibilities? Does it suggest a kinship that extends beyond humanity? These are not questions science alone can answer, but the science provides a foundation for thinking about them. A biological reality that challenges us to reconsider our relationship with the living world. At the same time, it is important to approach these ideas with both wonder and care. Evolutionary connection does not erase real differences between species. Humans have capacities other animals do not. Other animals have capacities humans do not. The tree of life is not a hierarchy with humans at the top. It is a branching structure where every living thing is the current endpoint of its own evolutionary lineage, equally evolved, equally adapted to its own circumstances. Still, the fact of shared ancestry remains astonishing. It means that the living world is not a collection of separate creations. It is a single unfolding process, a continuous exploration of possibilities, a branching pattern of descent with modification that has produced the immense diversity you see around you. And at the root of that branching pattern, connecting everything, is the simple fact that all life comes from life, that every organism inherits its form and function from ancestors stretching back to the beginning. A final thought to drift through gently. Evolutionary history reveals that connection is not just a feature of life, it is the essence of life. You exist because an unbroken chain of organisms survived, reproduced, and passed on their genetic information across billions of years. That chain includes fish that crawled onto land, reptiles that developed warm-bloodedness, mammals that climbed into trees, primates that walked upright, and countless others whose names we will never know but whose legacy lives on in every cell of your body. You are not an isolated individual. You're a living thread in a tapestry woven over billions of years, connected to every other thread by the shared history of descent. The web of life is not just a present-day network. It is a structure that extends through time, linking past, present, and future in a single continuous pattern. And you, here, now, breathing and thinking and wondering about your place in this vast web, are a living expression of that ancient ongoing story. This is the fifth layer of connection, and it reminds us that to understand life is to understand history. To see the web clearly is to see not just how organisms interact today, but how they've been connected always, through the deep roots of evolutionary ancestry that make all life one. If we bring all these layers together, we begin to see the full picture of connection. Life on Earth is not a collection of separate things happening in the parallel. It is a single integrated system where every organism, every process, every relationship fits into a larger pattern. The web of life operates at multiple scales simultaneously, from molecular interactions inside cells to global cycles spanning the entire planet, from relationships between individual organisms to evolutionary histories, stretching back billions of years. Let us gather these threads gently and see how they weave together. At the smallest scale, you are connected to other life through the very molecules that make up your body. The atoms in your cells have cycled through countless other organisms. The carbon in your bones was once in the air, then in a plant, then in an animal, then back into the soil and eventually into you. The nitrogen in your DNA was fixed from the atmosphere by bacteria, passed through food webs, and incorporated into your tissues. The water in your cells has evaporated from oceans, fallen as rain, flowed through rivers, been absorbed by plants, and cycled endlessly through the living and non-living world. You are made of recycled material, ancient atoms that connect you physically to every organism that has ever lived. At the cellular scale, you are connected through symbiosis. Your cells contain mitochondria, once free-living bacteria that became permanent partners billions of years ago. Your gut contains trillions of microbes that help you digest food, produce vitamins, and maintain your health. You are not a single organism but a community, a collection of different species working together, so interconnected that separating them becomes meaningless. This pattern repeats throughout the living world. Coral depends on algae, trees depend on fungi, lichens are partnerships between fungi and photosynthetic organisms. Symbiosis is not rare, it is foundational, woven into the structure of life at every level. At the ecosystem scale, you are connected through food, webs, and ecological relationships. The food you eat ties you to plants, pollinators, soil microbes, and countless other organisms involved in producing, transporting, and preparing that food. The oxygen you breathe was made by photosynthetic organisms. The water you drink was filtered by wetlands and forests. The stability of the environment around you depends on predators controlling prey populations, on decomposers recycling nutrients, on keystone species holding ecosystems in balance. You do not exist in isolation. You are supported by a vast network of ecological relationships, most of which you never see but which sustain you every moment. At the planetary scale, you're connected through global cycles and systems. The atmosphere you breathe was shaped by billions of years of photosynthetic life. The soil beneath your feet was built by countless generations of organisms breaking down rock and organic matter. The climate that makes your life possible is regulated by the collective activity of forests, oceans, and microscopic organisms cycling carbon, water, and other elements. Life does not just inhabit Earth. Life shapes Earth, maintaining conditions that allow life to continue. You are part of this planetary system, your existence dependent on processes happening in rainforests, oceans, tundra, and deserts, places you may never visit but which affect you nonetheless. At the historical scale, you are connected through evolutionary ancestry. Every living thing on Earth shares common ancestors. You are related, quite literally, to every plant, animal, fungus, and microbe. The genetic code in your cells is the same code used by all life. The basic biochemistry of your body is shared across domains of life. The structures of your body, from the bones in your hands to the organization of your nervous system, carry echoes of ancient ancestors, modified and adapted but still recognizably part of the same lineage. You are not separate from the rest of life. You are a continuation of it, a living branch on a tree that has been growing for billions of years. A gentle way to hold all these layers together is to return to the metaphor of web. Imagine the most intricate spider web you have ever seen, glistening with hue in the morning light. Each strand is delicate, almost invisible, but together they create a structure of remarkable strength and complexity. The web has no center. Every point is connected to every other point through multiple pathways. Pull on one strand and the entire structure responds, shifting and adjusting to maintain its integrity. Now imagine that this web extends in all directions, not just across space but through time. The strands are not static, they are dynamic, constantly forming new connections, breaking old ones, adapting to changes. Some strands represent ecological relationships, connecting predators to prey, plants to pollinators, hosts to symbionts. Other strands represent nutrient cycles, carrying carbon, nitrogen, and water between organisms and environment. Still others represent evolutionary history, linking present-day species to ancient ancestors through branching lineages of descent. You are a knot in this web, a place where many strands intersect. Every breath you take pulls on strands connecting you to photosynthetic organisms. Every meal you eat pulls on strands connecting you to soil, sun, water, and countless other organisms involved in producing food. Every microbe in your gut is a strand connecting you to symbiotic partners. Every gene in your DNA is a strand connecting you to evolutionary ancestors. You are not separate from the web, you are woven into it, held in place by countless connections, supported by relationships you may never fully understand but which sustain you completely. This understanding can feel overwhelming. It suggests that nothing we do exists in isolation, that every action ripples through the web in ways we cannot fully predict or control. But it can also feel profoundly comforting. It means we are never truly alone. We are held in place by the web, supported by relationships both seen and unseen, part of something much larger and much older than ourselves. When scientists study the web of life, they find patterns that repeat at different scales. Networks of interaction show similar structures, whether they describe food webs in ecosystems, metabolic networks inside cells, or neural networks in brains. The same principles of connection, feedback, and resilience appear again and again. Life organizes itself into networks, and those networks create emergent properties, behaviors, and characteristics that cannot be predicted from studying individual parts alone. For example, a single tree in isolation is just a tree, but a forest, a network of trees connected by fungal threads, sharing nutrients and information, responding to threats collectively, becomes something more. It develops resilience. It regulates its own microclimate. It supports biodiversity. These properties emerge from connection, from the web of relationships between trees and fungi and countless other organisms. The same is true at larger scales. An ecosystem is more than the sum of its species. It has stability, productivity, and resilience that emerge from the interactions between organisms. The biosphere, the global system of all life on Earth, has properties that emerge from planetary scale connections. It regulates atmospheric chemistry. It influences climate. It creates feedback loops that maintain conditions suitable for life. You too are an emergent property. Your consciousness, your sense of self, your thoughts and feelings emerge from the interactions of billions of neurons in your brain, which in turn depend on the activity of trillions of cells in your body, which in turn depend on symbiotic microbes, nutrients cycled through ecosystems, oxygen produced by photosynthetic organisms, and countless other connections stretching outward into the web. You are not separate from this web. You are a pattern in it, a temporary configuration of relationships that creates the experience of being you. This perspective can be both humbling and liberating. Humbling because it reveals how dependent we are, how fragile our existence is, how deeply we rely on processes beyond our control. But liberating because it shows that we are part of something vast and beautiful, that our existence has meaning not in isolation but in connection, that we are threads in a tapestry woven over billions of years. When approached with care, this understanding invites a different way of relating to the world. If you see yourself as separate, as an individual standing apart from nature, it is easy to see the natural world as something to be used, exploited or controlled. But if you see yourself as part of the web, as a thread woven into the same fabric as every other living thing, it becomes harder to harm the web without recognizing that you are harming yourself. This does not mean romanticizing nature or ignoring real conflicts between human needs and ecological health. It means recognizing that those conflicts arise from our place within the web, not outside it. We depend on the web for air, water, food, climate stability, and countless other services. When we disrupt the web through deforestation, pollution, overfishing, or climate change, we are not just harming other species, we are fraying the connections that support us. At the same time, the web is resilient. It has survived mass extinctions, ice ages, asteroid impacts, and dramatic shifts in atmospheric chemistry. Life adapts, evolves, and finds new ways to weave connections. The web is not static. It is dynamic, constantly changing, constantly reorganizing itself in response to new conditions. Understanding this resilience can be hopeful. It suggests that even when we cause damage, healing is possible if we give the web space and time to recover. A final thought to drift through gently. The web of life is both ancient and ongoing. It has been growing for billions of years, and it continues to grow today. Every new organism born is a new thread added to the web. Every relationship formed is a new connection woven. Every species that evolves is a new branch on the tree of life. You are part of this ongoing process. Your existence adds to the web. Your actions shape it, for better or worse. And when you die, your body will return to the web, your molecules recycled, your atoms passed on to new life, continuing the pattern that has sustained all living things since the beginning. This is the full picture of connection, seen from multiple angles, understood at multiple scales. Life on Earth is not a collection of separate things, it is a single interconnected system, a web woven from ecological relationships, nutrient cycles, symbiotic partnerships, global processes, and evolutionary history. Every living thing is a thread in this web, connected to every other thread by pathways both visible and invisible, immediate and ancient, local and global. You are part of this web. You have always been part of it. And as long as you live, you will continue to be part of it, held in place by connections that stretch outward in all directions, linking you to forests and oceans, to soil and sky, to past and future, to every living thing that shares this planet with you. So as this journey comes to its gentle close, perhaps you can rest in that knowledge. You are not alone. You are connected deeply and intimately to the vast living world around you. Every breath you take, every bite you eat, every moment you exist, you are participating in the web of life. A collaboration so old and so vast that it encompasses everything that has ever lived. You are a thread in that web, unique and irreplaceable, held in place by relationships that sustain you, connected to everything, part of one vast living whole. And with that thought, perhaps you can let yourself drift, knowing that you are held, that you are part of something beautiful, that you're connected in ways both seen and unseen to the most intricate and remarkable collaboration the universe has ever created. Thank you for drifting through this exploration with me. If you found it calming, or if it helped you see the living world in a new way, I would love to hear about it in the comments. And if you would like more gentle explorations of science and nature, a like and a subscribe would mean the world to this sleepy little channel. Until next time, rest well, and remember, you are part of the web.